Clayton had always lived a quiet life. People in town often said he was a man who spoke more with his eyes than with his words. He grew up on the wide fields of West Texas, where the sky felt large enough to hold every dream and every worry. His days began before sunrise and ended long after sunset. The ranch where he worked had been his home since he was a boy, and he knew every inch of it: the smell of the soil, the sound of the wind, and the gentle rhythm of horses moving in their stalls. Most people thought the cowboy life was full of adventure, but for Clayton it was mostly routine. He woke up, fed the animals, repaired fences, guided the cattle, and made sure everything ran smoothly. It was an honest life, but it was also a lonely one. He didn't mind the silence because he had grown used to it. In fact, silence was the only thing that never disappointed him. But even quiet men have memories that follow them everywhere. Clayton carried a few moments from his past that he didn't talk about, not because they were dramatic or heartbreaking, but because they shaped him in ways he never fully understood. His childhood was simple, and his parents loved him. But life on the plains taught him early that people come and go. Some leave by choice, some by circumstance. And so he learned to love gently, stay calm, and never expect much from anyone. Even though he was kind to everyone in town, he kept a distance. He attended community events sometimes, but he never stayed long. He would smile, nod at familiar faces, and then quietly return to his ranch before anyone noticed he was gone. Many women admired him from afar: his strong build, sun-tanned skin, and calm manner. But Clayton never paid much attention. He believed he didn't have much to offer, and he never wanted to get close to someone only to eventually walk away or be left behind. Life moved forward like that for years. Work, silence, long rides on horseback, and evenings alone with a cup of coffee on his porch. He watched the sky turn orange at sunset, listened to the soft sounds of nature, and thought that maybe this was enough. Maybe this was the life he was meant to live. But a person never knows when life is about to change. One Friday evening, after a long and tiring week, Clayton felt restless. He didn't know why. His chores were done, the horses were fed, and everything was in order. Still, he felt a strange pull inside, like something was calling him to leave the ranch for a little while. He wiped the dust from his boots, changed his shirt, and drove into town. The small town was hosting a charity festival that night. It was an annual event filled with bright lights, music, food stalls, games for kids, and performances by local talents. Clayton usually avoided big gatherings, but for some reason he kept driving until he reached the main street, where crowds were already gathered. The air smelled of grilled corn, fresh bread, and cotton candy. Children ran past him laughing, older couples strolled hand in hand, and the sound of cheerful music floated through the warm evening. Clayton felt slightly out of place, but he kept walking. The mayor had set up a stage near the center of town. People stood around waiting for the next performance. Clayton didn't really plan to stay, but just as he was about to turn back, the crowd cheered. A spotlight lit up the small stage, and a young woman stepped into the center. Clayton stopped without meaning to. The woman, Mara, wore a simple flowing dress that moved softly with the wind. Her hair was tied back, and her smile seemed warm enough to brighten the entire street. The moment the music started, she began to dance. Clayton had seen dancers before, but something about Mara was different. It wasn't just her skill. It was the way she danced with her whole heart, as if she wasn't performing for a crowd, but simply expressing joy. Her movements were graceful and full of life. She spun lightly, her dress following like a ribbon in the breeze. Her presence pulled people closer, as if the air around her carried a special kind of energy. Clayton, dusty from work and tired from the week, suddenly felt awake. He stood quietly at the back of the crowd, blending into the shadows. He didn't clap or cheer, he just watched. And as he watched, a small feeling stirred in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't understand it completely, but it felt warm and gentle, like the first sunlight of morning. Mara danced with confidence, but she didn't dance to impress. She danced because she loved it, and that honesty touched Clayton more than anything else. The music shifted to a slower tune. The lights dimmed, leaving only a soft glow around her. Mara moved with elegance, her arms flowing, her steps light. Her eyes shined under the lights, and for a moment, Clayton felt like time had slowed. The noise of the festival faded. The worries in his mind faded. All he could see was her dance. When the song came to an end, the crowd clapped loudly. Mara bowed with a bright smile, her face glowing with pride and humility. People around Clayton talked excitedly, praising her performance and her energy. But Clayton stayed silent. He felt something unusual, a gentle ache, like he wanted to speak but didn't know what to say. After the performance, Mara left the stage and walked toward the booth area. The event continued, but Clayton's attention followed her. He didn't want to appear obvious, so he moved slowly, pretending to look around. When he reached her booth, he saw her arranging handmade bracelets, carved wooden items, and colorful fabric pieces. She looked completely different from her stage self, calmer, focused, and maybe a little tired. But her smile remained warm. Clayton stood a few steps away, unsure whether he should approach. A part of him felt silly. Why would a dancer like her want to talk to a quiet cowboy like him? He didn't wear fancy clothes. He wasn't charming. He wasn't used to small talk or social confidence, but something kept him standing there anyway. He watched her organize the items with care, brushing her hair from her face occasionally, talking politely to every customer who passed. She seemed kind and patient, even when people browsed without buying anything. Clayton wanted to encourage her, but words felt heavy in his throat. He tried to walk away, then stopped again. His feet didn't listen. His heart didn't either. Maybe it was her smile. Maybe it was her dance. Maybe it was the quiet feeling she stirred inside him, something he thought he had lost years ago. He finally took a small step forward. One more, and then another. But before he could say anything, another customer came and spoke to her. Clayton moved back quietly, giving space. He didn't want to interrupt. When the customer left, he tried again. Still, he hesitated. This continued for a few minutes. He stayed close enough to show interest, but far enough that no one noticed him. He felt like a man caught between fear and hope. Clayton didn't know it yet, but that night would change something in him. Sometimes life opens a small door at an unexpected moment. Sometimes it starts with a simple step forward. And sometimes all it takes is watching someone dance under festival lights to realize how lonely your heart has been. Clayton left the festival later than he expected, but something inside him had shifted. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But he knew one thing for sure. He would return, and the next time, he wouldn't just watch. He would try to talk to her. Mara had always been known for her bright smile, the kind that made people feel welcome even if they met her for the first time. But behind that smile lived a world of responsibilities, worries, and silent hopes she didn't share with many people. She grew up in a small family that worked hard to survive. Her parents owned a tiny craft shop near the edge of town. It wasn't famous, it wasn't big, and it didn't bring them much money, but it was their pride. Her mother made handmade bracelets and embroidered scarves. Her father carved small wooden decorations and repaired old items for customers who couldn't afford new ones. Mara learned everything from them: how to make things with her hands, how to stay patient, and how to smile even when times were difficult. Dancing was the only thing she loved that didn't come from the shop. It was her dream, her escape, the place where she felt free. But dreams don't always pay bills, so she danced at local events whenever she could to support her family. Lately, life had become harder. The shop's income dropped, bills stacked up, and her parents tried their best not to show their worry, but Mara could always see it in their eyes. So she began performing more often at small festivals, charity events, and local gatherings, any place where she could earn a little money or sell a few handmade items. On the night of the festival, she had practiced her dance earlier at home. She wasn't nervous about performing. She had been dancing since she was a child. But she was worried about something else, whether people would buy anything from her booth. She hoped to sell enough crafts to help pay for the shop's rent that month. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights felt bright and warm on her skin. The music filled her ears, and she let herself flow with it. For a few minutes, she forgot the stress, the bills, the silent fears. She danced like she always did, with her heart open and her mind free. The applause after her performance comforted her. She smiled, bowed, and thanked everyone inside her mind. But she knew the real challenge would begin once she went to her booth. Dancing made her soul happy. Selling crafts kept her family alive. She walked to the booth area, set her items neatly, and fixed a few pieces that had gotten tangled during the drive. She tied her hair back again, wiped a bit of sweat from her forehead, and took a deep breath. She scanned the crowd. Some people admired her dance, but most moved on quickly to get food or go to other performances. She tried not to feel discouraged. After all, she had learned long ago that even when the world feels heavy, the only thing she could control was her attitude. A few customers came by. She greeted each one warmly, explaining the stories behind the items, how her father carved a wooden star from leftover materials, how her mother stitched a scarf using saved threads, how the bracelet designs came from old family traditions. Some listened politely but walked away without buying anything. Others smiled and said they would come back later, though Mara knew they probably wouldn't. She stayed calm and kind. She never blamed anyone. If they didn't buy something, it simply meant her family had to try harder. As she adjusted a bracelet display, she felt someone watching her. When she looked up, she saw a tall cowboy standing a short distance away. He wasn't staring in a rude way. His expression was gentle, almost shy. Dust clung to his boots. His hat shaded part of his face, but she could still see his eyes. He had been watching quietly ever since she left the stage. She wasn't sure why he seemed nervous to approach. Many people talked to her easily, but he stood as if he was waiting for permission. Mara found that oddly sweet. She could sense something honest about him, something humble. Maybe he wasn't used to crowds, maybe he wanted to buy something but didn't know how to start a conversation. She wondered if he enjoyed her dance, or if he simply wandered near her booth by chance. Every time she turned to fix an item, she could still feel his presence nearby. He took a step forward, then stepped back whenever someone else came to talk to her. It made her smile a little. It was rare to see someone so unsure yet so genuinely interested. Mara never made fun of people's shyness. In fact, she admired sincerity. She continued working while keeping an eye on him. She noticed the way he held his hat slightly lower, the way he looked at her crafts with slow, careful eyes, and the way he avoided making others uncomfortable. He didn't push or interrupt. He seemed like someone raised with respect. After a few minutes, Mara decided to break the silence. She didn't want him to feel awkward forever. She called out gently, "Hi there." The cowboy froze for a second before looking up. Almost surprised, she noticed him. She smiled warmly. "You can come closer if you want to see something. I don't bite." His shoulders relaxed a little, and he took a hesitant step closer. Mara could see he was still unsure, so she tried to lighten the moment. "You watched the whole dance, didn't you?" she asked with a playful tone but no teasing. He nodded slowly. His voice was quiet when he answered. "Yes, ma'am." Mara laughed softly. "Well, don't just watch. Buy something." She didn't mean anything bold. It was a simple joke to help him feel less nervous. A bit of humor always helped break heavy silence. But when she said it, she noticed the way his face changed. First startled, then amused. A shy smile appeared on his lips. perhaps the first smile he had shown all evening. I might, he said, looking down at the table. She pointed to the bracelets. These are handmade. And these wooden ones? My father carves them. He puts a lot of effort into every piece. Clayton, though she didn't know his name yet, picked up a simple bracelet. His fingers moved carefully across the thread like he was afraid to break it. He didn't rush. He didn't pretend to know anything. He just observed it slowly, almost respectfully. "How much?" he finally asked. She told him the price, and he nodded without hesitation. He didn't try to bargain. He didn't complain. He simply reached into his pocket, took out the money, and handed it to her with gentle hands. As she wrapped the bracelet in a small paper bag, she felt something warm settle between them. Not romantic, not dramatic, just a quiet connection. He seemed like someone who appreciated small things, someone who valued kindness over show. When she handed him the bag, their fingers brushed lightly. He didn't pull away quickly, but he didn't linger either. His eyes met hers for a moment, and she saw something deep in them. Softness, quiet strength, and maybe a little loneliness. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're welcome," she replied, just as gently. He didn't rush to leave. He stood there for a few seconds, as if he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Mara didn't push him. She allowed the silence to stay calm between them. When another customer arrived, he stepped back to give space, but he didn't walk away immediately. He watched for a while longer, then finally nodded politely at her before turning to leave. Mara watched him go with a small smile. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. But she knew that he was different from most people who passed by her booth. He didn't only watch her dance, he saw her. And somehow, that small moment made her evening feel brighter. Clayton left the festival that night with the small paper bag in his hand and a strange warmth in his chest. He had bought only a simple bracelet, something small, something inexpensive. But the feeling it gave him was more meaningful than anything he had felt in a long time. He kept looking at the paper bag as he walked to his truck, as if it held something more than a handmade item. It held a moment he didn't want to forget. He didn't know what it was about Mara that touched him so deeply. Maybe it was the way she smiled without forcing it. Maybe it was the gentleness in her voice when she spoke to him. Or maybe it was the playful line she had said so confidently, "Don't just watch, buy something." He smiled to himself, remembering it. He rarely laughed, but she made him laugh with a simple sentence, and even though it was meant as a light joke, a part of him felt she had said it especially for him. On the drive back to the ranch, he kept replaying their short interaction. Her warm eyes, her friendly laugh, the way she noticed him even though he tried to stay quiet. Clayton wasn't used to people seeing him. Many times he felt invisible in crowds, but she had seen him in those few seconds, and it made him feel human in a new way. When he reached home, the night sky was filled with stars. The air smelled like dry grass and open fields. Clayton placed the bag on his table and sat on his porch, staring out into the dark horizon. He held the bracelet gently in his hands, thinking about her smile, thinking about her strength, thinking about how the world seemed lighter just because she existed. He knew one thing clearly. He wanted to see her again. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. His chores felt easier, as if he had extra energy in his steps. Even the horses sensed his lighter mood. They nudged him softly as he fed them. Clayton tried to ignore the feeling building inside him, telling himself he was acting silly, but he couldn't help it. The thought of Mara working at her booth, smiling at people, arranging her crafts. He wanted to see all of that again, but he didn't want to look desperate, so he waited a few days. 3 days passed before he went back to town. He told himself he was going to buy supplies for the ranch. He told himself it was normal, nothing unusual. But deep down, he knew the real reason. He wanted to see if she was there. The booth area wasn't set up during the week, but he hoped maybe she worked near the shop or practiced her dance somewhere close. When he reached the marketplace, the sun was high, and the streets were busy with people buying groceries and running errands. He walked slowly, not wanting to look like he was searching too hard. Then he saw her. Mara stood outside her family's shop, organizing items on a table. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied in a loose ponytail. Her hands moved with care as she arranged bracelets and small wooden crafts, just like the ones she sold at the festival. She looked beautiful, not because of her clothes or makeup, but because she looked peaceful, focused, and hard-working. Her smile appeared every time she greeted someone who walked by. Clayton stopped in his tracks. For a moment, he just watched her the way he had watched her dance, quietly, respectfully, completely mesmerized. Mara looked up at that exact moment and saw him. Her eyes brightened with recognition. "Oh," she said, smiling, "it's the quiet cowboy." Clayton felt his heart skip a beat. No one had ever called him anything like that. It felt friendly, warm, almost personal. He walked toward her slowly. "Ma'am," he greeted softly, tipping his hat. "You came back," she said gently. Not accusing, not surprised, just happy. Clayton nodded. "I needed to come to town." She smiled knowingly. "For supplies or for something else?" Clayton's ears warmed slightly. She was teasing him, but in a kind way. He didn't know how to answer, so he simply said, "Both, I guess." Mara laughed softly. "Well, whichever reason brought you here, I'm glad you stopped by." Her voice was soft but playful, comforting but bright. Clayton relaxed a little. He stepped closer to look at the items on the table. His fingers brushed over a wooden pin, then a colorful fabric patch. "These are nice," he murmured. "My parents work on most of them," she explained. "I help with the designs sometimes, and I make the bracelets myself." He nodded, his eyes scanning the items. "You work hard." She shrugged lightly. "Everyone does. We just have to keep moving." There was something in her words, a quiet strength, a calm acceptance of life's struggles. Clayton admired that. He wanted to say something meaningful, something encouraging, but words felt heavy as always. Then Mara leaned against the table slightly and looked at him with a playful spark in her eyes. "You know," she said softly, "if you stand there too long without buying anything, I'll have to repeat what I said at the festival." Clayton looked up, confused. "What's that?" She grinned. "Don't just watch. Buy something." He laughed again, gently, shyly, but sincerely. Her teasing wasn't sharp. It was warm. It made him feel comfortable instead of embarrassed. Clayton finally picked up a small wooden star. "I'll take this." Her eyes softened. "You didn't have to buy again." "I wanted to," he said quietly. When she wrapped the item, she asked, "Can I know your name this time? So I don't have to call you Quiet Cowboy forever?" He cleared his throat. "Clayton." "Clayton," she repeated, testing the sound of it. "Nice to meet you properly." He hesitated before asking, "And you? What's your name?" "Mara," she said, her smile widening. Clayton nodded, repeating it inside his mind. Mara. It fit her perfectly, soft but full of life. After a pause, she asked, "Did you like my dance at the festival?" He looked at her with an honesty he rarely showed anyone. "Yes, it was beautiful." Her cheeks warmed slightly, but her smile remained steady. "Thank you. Dancing is something that keeps me going." Clayton wanted to ask more, wanted to know what she meant, but he didn't want to push. Still, Mara spoke on her own, sensing his curiosity. "My family shop. It's not doing great these days. So I dance whenever there are events. It helps a little." Clayton felt something tighten in his chest. Not pity, but respect. He admired people who worked hard with dignity. "You're doing a lot," he said quietly. She shrugged. "I'm trying." There was a moment of silence between them. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just soft, quiet, like they both understood something without saying it. Mara looked at him with gentle eyes. "You know, Clayton, you don't have to be shy with me." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "I'm not shy." She laughed. "You are." He lowered his eyes. "Maybe a little." "Well," she said, standing straight again, "it's fine. I don't mind. Sometimes shy people have the kindest hearts." Clayton didn't know how to respond, but her words touched him deeply. After wrapping the wooden star, she handed it to him. Their fingers brushed again. This time, he didn't step back. She didn't either. Clayton held the small package gently, as if it was more than just a wooden star. Maybe it was. Maybe it was the beginning of something he didn't understand yet. "Thank you," he said again. "You're welcome," Mara replied softly. "Come back any time." And in that moment, Clayton knew something important. He would come back. Not because he needed supplies, not because he wanted to buy more items, but because Mara's smile, her courage, her kindness, everything about her, called him in a way nothing had in years. He walked away slowly, holding the wooden star like it carried a piece of her warmth, and Mara watched him go with a smile that stayed long after he disappeared from the busy street. Clayton's visits to town slowly became a routine. Though he never admitted that to anyone, not even to himself, he told people he came for tools, wire, or supplies for the ranch, but his real reason always stayed the same. He wanted to see Mara. Every time he walked toward the small shop, his heart beat a little faster, and every time Mara saw him approaching, her eyes brightened in a way that made his quiet world feel warmer. Weeks passed like this, pleasantly, softly, without rushing. Clayton would stop by the shop, sometimes buying a small item, sometimes just helping her carry boxes or fix small things. Mara never asked too many questions. She simply welcomed him with her gentle smile, as if his presence was enough. On one warm afternoon, the street was quieter than usual. Most customers had already finished their shopping. The sun was lowering behind the hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. The warm light fell on Mara's booth, making her handmade items glow softly. Clayton arrived carrying a bag of supplies he had bought earlier. Mara looked up from arranging a row of bracelets and waved when she saw him. "You're early today," she said playfully. "Or maybe I'm late." "I finished my work sooner," he replied, placing the bag on a nearby bench. Mara tilted her head with a thoughtful smile. "Or maybe you just wanted to escape your chores." He chuckled quietly. "Maybe." She continued arranging the items while Clayton watched her hands move. She moved with a kind of calmness that settled the air around her. She didn't rush, didn't panic. She treated every little craft with care, as if it meant something important. After a few minutes, she stepped back and sighed softly. "These festival days help a little, but not enough." Clayton's expression changed. "Shop still struggling?" Mara nodded slowly. "Yes. My parents don't say much, but I can see the worry on their faces. I try to help as much as I can, but sometimes I feel like it's still not enough." Clayton shifted closer, his voice calm. "You're doing more than you think." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and tiredness. "Thank you. Really, it's nice to hear that." For a moment, silence fell between them, but it wasn't cold or distant. It was quiet in a peaceful way, like they both understood each other without speaking. Then something unexpected happened. A gust of wind blew through the street, knocking down some of the lighter crafts on the table. The bracelets scattered across the ground. and the wooden items rolled toward the edge. "Oh, no!" Mara exclaimed, rushing to gather them. Clayton quickly knelt beside her. "Let me help!" They picked up the pieces one by one, their hands brushing against each other occasionally. Neither of them pulled away quickly this time. Their movements synced naturally, and even in the hurry, Clayton noticed the way Mara gently handled each item, making sure none were damaged. When they finished, Mara let out a small laugh. "The wind seems angry today," Clayton smiled. "Maybe it's trying to get your attention." She raised an eyebrow playfully. "Why would it need my attention when someone else already seems to be watching me all the time?" Clayton froze for a second, then looked down with a shy smile. Mara laughed softly, not mocking him, just enjoying the easy comfort between them. As she stood up, she brushed the dust from her dress. Clayton picked up the last wooden piece and handed it to her. She took it, but instead of placing it back on the table, she looked at him thoughtfully. "You're different from most people," she said quietly. Clayton blinked. "Different how?" "In a good way," she replied. "You're quiet, but you pay attention. You help without expecting anything, and you don't pretend to be someone you're not." He didn't know how to respond. Compliments always made him awkward, but coming from her, they felt meaningful. Mara continued in a softer tone. "Most people like to talk loudly or show off, but you're simple, calm. It's refreshing." Clayton swallowed lightly. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied gently. "I just wanted you to know." He nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through his chest again. One he didn't try to hide anymore. But the calm moment didn't last long. A voice called from inside the shop. "Mara, come in for a minute, please." It was her mother. Mara turned to Clayton. "Wait here? I'll be back in a moment." He nodded. "Sure." She went inside the shop, and Clayton leaned against the wall, watching the street, the sky, and the small shop that had slowly become the center of his thoughts. Inside, Mara's mother spoke in worried tones. Though Clayton couldn't hear the words, he could read the concern in her movements. When Mara stepped back outside a few minutes later, her smile was gentle, but it didn't reach her eyes fully. Clayton noticed immediately. "Everything all right?" Mara hesitated. "Just bills, shop issues, usual things." He could tell she was trying to stay strong. She always did. But something in her expression made his heart ache slightly, an ache he had never felt for anyone before. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked softly. Mara looked up at him, surprised. "Clayton, you don't have to worry about our problems." "I know," he said, "but I still want to help." Her eyes softened. "You've already helped more than you know." He looked down. "I haven't done anything special." "You show up," she said with quiet honesty. "And sometimes showing up is more than enough." Clayton felt the words sink deep into him. For years, he believed he had nothing to offer except hard work and silence. But to Mara, his presence seemed to matter. She looked at him more gently now. "Clayton, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you keep coming back?" The question caught him off guard, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he didn't know how to say it without sounding foolish. He looked away for a moment, gathering courage, then returned his gaze to her. "I come back because—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Because I like being around you." Her breath softly caught, her eyes widening slightly. Not in shock, but in quiet surprise. Clayton continued, though his voice remained soft. "You make things feel lighter. You make me feel seen. And I like that." Mara's lips curved into a slow, warm smile. A smile not just of kindness, but of genuine emotion. "Clayton," she whispered, "I like being around you too." The world seemed to pause for a moment, just long enough for them to understand the quiet truth standing between them. Their hands brushed again, not by accident this time, and when their fingers stayed close, neither pulled away. The wind softened. The street quieted, and for the first time, both felt the beginning of something new, something gentle, something honest, something neither of them expected. A connection that didn't need loud words, a connection that started the moment a cowboy watched a girl dance, and now it was growing, slowly, calmly, beautifully. Clayton stood near the small stage long after the crowd had started leaving. The festival lights were dimming slowly, one string at a time, as volunteers began packing things up. Music still floated in the air, soft and warm, like the end of a long but beautiful day. Clayton waited quietly, holding a small wooden box in his hand. He had made it himself, every line carved with patience, every corner shaped with care. He had worked on it for days, checking it again and again to make sure it was perfect. He wasn't a man of many words. Most of the time, he let his actions speak for him. But tonight, his heart felt heavier than usual, as if it carried something important, something he didn't want to lose. He kept looking at the box in his hands, wondering if Mara would understand what he was trying to say without actually saying it. He hoped she would. She always seemed to understand him better than most people. On the other side of the field, Mara finally finished talking to a group of children who had watched her dance. She always stayed behind to speak with them, encourage them, or simply share a smile. Her energy amazed everyone. She could dance for 20 minutes straight and still have enough warmth left to brighten a tired child's heart. Tonight, though, she looked a bit tired. Not sad, just worn out in that way someone feels after giving the world every piece of themselves. She walked toward her booth to pack her things. The cloth she spread out, the handmade crafts, and a small sign that said, "Thank you for supporting local families." When she looked up, she noticed Clayton standing silently not too far away. Even from a distance, she could recognize his tall shape, his old hat, and the gentle way he watched her. She felt a familiar warmth inside her chest and walked toward him with a soft smile. "You waited for me?" she asked in her light, cheerful voice. Clayton nodded. "Yes, wanted to make sure you got home safe." Mara laughed softly. "You always say that, but I know you're not just here to walk me home tonight. Something else is going on. I can see it in your eyes." He looked down at the box in his hands, not knowing how to begin. Mara noticed it immediately. "What's that?" she asked gently, tilting her head. Clayton held it out slowly. "Something I made. For you." Mara took the box carefully, as if it were something delicate. She looked at the smooth wooden surface, smiling at the small hand-carved designs. "Clayton, this is beautiful. Did you really make this?" "Yes," he replied softly. "Took me a while." She opened the box slowly. Inside was the bracelet she had made weeks ago, the same one he bought on the night they first talked. Except now, it looked different. The thread was repaired, the tiny beadwork had been cleaned, and the bracelet looked almost new again. And beside it lay another one, a matching bracelet made from polished wood, carved in the same pattern. Mara stared at them for a long moment, her fingers trembling slightly. "Clayton, this isn't just a gift. It feels like something more." Clayton swallowed hard. This was the part he feared most, not because he was scared of her reaction, but because he wasn't good at expressing his feelings. But he looked into her eyes and found courage. "I don't want to rush anything," he said slowly. "And I don't want to make your life heavier. I just want to walk with you, help where I can, be around you, not because you need me, but because you make my days feel like they're worth something." Mara's eyes softened. glowing with a warmth that could melt even the hardest worry. She didn't speak for a moment. She simply held the wooden box closer, her heart full. "You've already helped more than you know," she whispered. "You came into my life at a time when everything felt uncertain and heavy, and somehow you made it easier without ever making me feel weak. I didn't expect someone like you to show up, but I'm glad you did." For a moment they stood in silence, the cool night breeze brushing past them. Mara looked at the bracelets again. One she made, one he carved. Two lives meeting in the middle, connected by simple, honest effort. She carefully took the wooden bracelet and slipped it onto her wrist. Then she picked up the repaired bracelet and held it out to him. "This one belongs to you now," she said softly. Clayton looked surprised. "But you made it. And you fixed it," she replied. "We both touched it, so it belongs to both of us. Wear it. So it'll remind you that you're not alone now." Clayton hesitated for a second, then took the bracelet and tied it gently around his wrist. When he looked up again, Mara was smiling in that gentle way that always made him feel calm. They began walking slowly toward the road, side by side. The night was quiet, and the stars above were scattered like tiny lamps guiding their way. Mara walked close enough that their shoulders brushed lightly now and then. She didn't pull away. She didn't need to. "I used to think life would always feel heavy," she said quietly. "Like I had to carry everything alone. But when you started helping me, even in small ways, I felt lighter." Clayton kept his eyes on the road but listened closely. Every word she said felt precious. "I didn't know if I deserved someone who cared," she continued. "But you show up, not with big promises or dramatic gestures, just quietly, kindly, every time. That means more to me than anything." Clayton took a slow breath. "I don't know how to do things fancy," he admitted. "I only know how to be steady." "And that's enough," she whispered. They reached her house's front gate. Mara turned to him, the warm porch light falling softly on her face. She held his hand gently, her fingers fitting easily between his. "Whatever happens from here," she said, "I want you to know that I'm grateful you came into my life. And I want us to keep building this, slowly, honestly. I don't want anything else." Clayton nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him that he hadn't felt in many years. "I want the same." Mara smiled, a real soft smile that carried hope, trust, and something deeper that didn't need words yet. Before going inside, she whispered, "Thank you for choosing to walk toward me." Clayton watched her go, feeling that her words had touched something deep inside him. He looked down at the bracelet on his wrist, then at the sky above. The world felt different, gentler, more meaningful. From that night on, their story quietly became known throughout the town. Not as a loud love story, but as a gentle one. A story of two people who healed each other through kindness, patience, and steady support. Mara's family business slowly improved with help from Clayton and the community. And Clayton, who once lived in silence and shadows, found laughter and light again. Their story wasn't perfect or dramatic. It was simple, real, and full of small moments that mattered. Moments that shaped a bond stronger than loud declarations. The cowboy who once only watched from a distance found someone worth stepping forward for, and the girl who once joked, "Don't just watch, buy something," found someone who invested not in a product, but in her future. A future they were ready to build, side by side,